Hey YouTube, what's going on? It's Patrick here at VectorVest, bringing you your Friday special update here. We're going to be taking a look at earnings previews for GameStop, which releases earnings on next Wednesday after the market closes. And since we have a holiday extended weekend, we will be closed on Monday. And by the time we can get a video out on Wednesday, earnings information will already be out. So I wanted to bring you an earnings update today so that way you can watch it over the long weekend and also talk about some of the expectations I want to hear from the earnings announcement, some of the new updates that I want to be informed about as a GameStop investor. And then, as always, we'll finish off with some technical analysis and see what the charts are telling us and break them down for you. So, if you're ready to learn, you're ready to find out, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Click on that notification bell to get live updates every single time we come out with new content, and let's get into it. All right, so first and foremost, for anybody who wasn't aware of this, as we see here, we have the announcement from GameStop from the 25th of August, and that they have set their second quarter fiscal 2021 earnings release date for Wednesday, September 8th, 2021. This will be after the market closes at roughly 5 p.m. Eastern. You'll be able to tune into the investor call to be able to listen in on that if you like. But let's go see what the projections are, the preview of their earnings performance are expected for this quarter. So I'll just simply head over to Yahoo Finance. And as we can see, for the current quarter, they're expecting an average of negative 66 cents per share. If this is the case, that they do have a negative earnings per share this quarter, then that could cool down the expectations of seeing GameStop getting entered into the S&P 500 anytime soon, or at least for another quarter. So they're expected to see a negative 66 cents per share on their earnings this quarter, and negative 48 cents per share in the next quarter. Now, if we've talked about in the past, if GameStop can have an earnings per share beat of about 10 cents, I believe, if I remember correctly, then that would put them positive for the 4 consecutive earnings periods of positive earnings, and therefore that would meet that requirement of being able to get added into the S&P 500, which would be absolutely massive for GameStop. Some of the news has already talked about this, but just as a side note for anybody who's not followed up with it, GameStop currently at its market cap is 3 times larger than some of the other stocks or the smaller stocks in the S&P 500. So it's not unimaginable to see that getting added in there. With this in mind, I think personally, we could definitely see an earnings beat, especially with only 4 analysts. It's a very small sample size that they're going off of, a bit different, and hopefully we can see the end results right after on September 9th. Now, some of the things I'm going to be looking forward to hearing in that earnings call is first and foremost, hearing for the first time the new CEO talking about the company, giving that earnings statement. But I also want to see their insights on the developments that they have on the NFT markets, what they're planning on doing with it, maybe a little bit more insight into that. As I've talked about in many videos in the past, the NFTs and working on a blockchain gaming system could be absolutely massive, especially for the long-term growth of GameStop, something nobody else is doing. Amazon, Netflix came out in their last earnings report and talked about how they want to start getting into that. But GameStop already has that set up in place, and with all the new hires that they've had to their board, hopefully we get some insight into seeing what they're planning on doing or getting a better idea of the time frame of when we could start to expect that. Some of the other things I'm looking forward to hearing about are potential dividends. I know there's been a lot of talk about that, especially since the NFT project got released. There's been a lot of talk about having a non-fungible token or an NFT dividend release that could help fight off some of the short sellers in GameStop. That would be absolutely massive. But even just a basic dividend from some of the $2 billion that they've raised over the last ATM offerings would definitely be nice and definitely hurt that short seller. Maybe not as much as an NFT, but could still hurt them nonetheless and is a positive for GameStop as well. And last but not least, the last thing I'm going to be focusing on and paying attention to in the earnings release is the talk about the e-commerce or the switch to e-commerce. If they're able to cut those overhead costs, how much that's expanding. We've seen a huge growth in our e-commerce business over the last year, And I'm definitely wanting to keep an eye on that to see if it's still continuing to expand at the rapid rate that we've seen over the last 3 quarters. So those are going to be my expectations for what to see when earnings gets released. Now with that, let's go jump into the chart and see what the technical analysis is telling us here. So right now we're looking at about an 8-month look back on GameStop. You can see the price shown in candlesticks. I have a 3 and 8 exponential moving average on the graph. And then below that, I have stochastics, which is a great overbought oversold indicator, DPO for momentum or trend indicator, and then MACD, which is kind of a conglomerate of both, can be used as a short-term and long-term trend indicator as well, and then volume at the bottom. So one of the things I want to first start off by taking a look at is using a common or popular technical analysis of Fibonacci retracements. So what I'm going to do here is just draw my Fibonacci retracements. And you can see we get a 0 line, 100% line showing the full move. And then in between that, a 50% retracement, 61.8, 38.2, and 23.6. These are key levels that for some reason tend to be hit more times than not. If you want more information on Fibonacci's, definitely go check that out. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time breaking them down for you.
So, not today.
But some of the key things that we want to look for is, when you have a run up like this, let's go ahead, adjust that a little bit more to about that 350 level, because that's where we've hit consistently time and time again. So that seems to be the current ceiling that we're noticing right now. Well, we came down here, we had about a 50% retracement from that high. Every single time we've done that, it's consolidated around that point and then starting to take off again right before the next big run up, like we saw back in March through the run up in June. And now again, we're hitting those same points and starting to blast off, starting off with that 27% up day we had just a week ago. So we're stalling out right at this 61.8 level, and therefore consolidating, that's fine. Taking a little bit of a breather, especially after such a big up day. Next move, looking for it to break through that level of resistance and start moving back towards that 100% retracement around 350. Now, stochastics tells us the stock is getting close to overbought territory, but as we know, like we've seen in the past, it can stay in overbought or oversold territory for quite some time. So no really alarming cause for concern that we see with that one. Looking at DPO is showing us that momentum is now positive and continuing to pick up here. And same with the MACD. As you can see, the MACD histogram is starting to widen here, showing us more and more momentum building to the upside currently. So from a chart standpoint, things are looking pretty solid, pretty consistent, especially to what we've seen historically throughout the year so far. Now, one last thing I do want to take a look at, and I'll remove some of these indicators so we can see this a little bit more clearly here, is earnings per share. Because as we've talked about, earnings, we did just see a pickup after the June announcement. We see earnings starting to pull back a little bit, but overall still higher over a 1-year basis, which is a positive sign, giving us a little bit of confirmation that we may actually see a beat on earnings come this September 8th announcement. So with that being said, one last thing we want to take a look at here today is we'll switch it from an end of day to a weekly graph, and let's go 9 months here and take out the Fibonacci's, because this is something, as we've talked about in other videos, we've seen a consistent pattern here with GameStop over the course of this last year. And on a weekly chart, it helps us get a little bit better consistency and see the pattern a little bit easier. So starting off at that run up that we had back in March, we had a stalling out here at a low, and we had 3 consecutive big weekly green bars. Then we saw the price pulling back. We found a doji, 3 consecutive big green bars before that crazy week we had for earnings. Pulling back, we had the doji like we did here, and now we're at 1 week, 2 weeks right now. So based off of this, if history repeats itself, what I'm looking for is to see the price of GameStop close at roughly about $220 a share by the end of the day. Unfortunately, I won't be able to show the close at the end of the day in today's video because this will be recorded well before that point. But that's where my expectation is set, is at around $220 a share, seeing it close at that point. Going into next week, which is a holiday shortened week, keep that in mind. And then seeing that next 3rd week, the explosive move coming could be after the earnings announcement, since usually that final week that we see the stock tumble is right after the earnings. Could be interesting. Maybe this time's a little bit different. The cycle's slowly expanding a little bit here and could make for a very interesting quarterly earnings announcement that we have coming up next Wednesday. So if you've enjoyed today's video, as always, smash that like button, leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you guys expect to see from the earnings announcement? And if you want to see this type of analysis on your own stocks, or if you want to follow along with this type of analysis with the VectorVest software, click on the link in the description below, sign up for the 30-day trial, and put the tools to the test on your own. So until next time, take care, have a great Labor Day weekend, and I'll see you guys on the moon.